wearing the Nerd on a Power Trip shirt because I am definitely about to hurt some feelings. Like, from the very get-go. I'm sorry, but I'm not. Hello, my lovely friends. It's Margaret. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in June. Now, hopefully the storm that's been threatening to burst out of the sky all afternoon does not come and wreck my lighting. But if you hear thunder, that's what's going on. You can vicariously live in Florida through this video. Unless you already live in Florida, in which case, I'm so sorry. I am here to count about. I am here to talk with y'all about the books that I read in the month of June. Ah, my battery's dying. We're gonna put these on a charger. This is why you buy 3 batteries, guys. And then decide to not charge them before you film. That was my fault. So, most of this month, I read very, very good books that I enjoyed. Most of them were 4 or 5 stars. There were a couple, though. Mostly there's just like one that I read that like started my month out with just a buzzkill of a book. But once I got over the slump that one put me in, we did pretty well this month. We are gonna start out with what will probably be the spiciest opinion I ever have on BookTube, the thing that will get me canceled by the masses. I signed up for this, I did this to myself, and yet I did not know it was possible to disappoint me at this level after Allegiant happened. Like, I have never been more let down by a book in my life until this book. I'm sorry, I know there are people that disagree with me, and I get it, you like the writing, you think they do great characters, but that does not, I'm already getting heated, that does not undo the harm I feel that this author does in regards to assault victims in her book. The book that I am talking about is Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb. I gave this 1 star, and I am going to stand by that rating. Mom, turn the video off because I'm gonna cuss in this. There is no way I am going to be able to talk about this without spoilers, so I will put a timestamp on the screen. If you want to skip me ranting about this book, if this is your favorite book ever, please do skip me ranting about this book. I do not want to shit on something that you hate, but I think the author did something extremely harmful besides just personally offending me. I am going to go into it, and there's no way I can go into that without having spoilers. I will say 2 out of the 3 main storylines in this book wrap up really, really well. I think they are handled really well. Robin Hobb does a good job of getting me from this is where the character started, and this is where they end up, and this is where they should be, this is where they need to be, this is where their story has taken them. That is my first problem with this book, is that she was able to take both Wintrow and Malta's storylines and not only tell me an interesting story and make me believe that they belonged where they were, but that she did not do it with the character that started the series. And I understand this is an ensemble book, I understand that this is grimdark, but I just like, which is a whole other thing, because I read these and I'm like, this doesn't seem particularly dark to me. I need both my hands, I'm putting this down. Spoilers are starting now. So, my favorite character was Althea. We spend almost 3 entire books that is about this character trying to get her ship back, trying to be reunited with this ship that was so important to her. And at the end, in the last 75-90%, it's like Robin Hobb stopped caring about that storyline. And where Althea ends just completely negates what felt like her entire plot line for 2 books, which was that women can be independent and women can be captains. Like, that was part of what was going on with Althea's story. For me, that was a really important part. Why do all of this stuff with her grandmother? Why do all of this stuff about her proving herself as a sailor, as someone who can be in charge of a crew? Why do all of that? Like, at the end of the day, there was no reason for Althea to be in any of these books if the way that we were going to end it was with someone else being the captain of the Vivacia and Althea being the first mate to her fucking husband. I get that this was early 2000s, and I get that that's what some women are okay with that. I just feel like if you're gonna tell a story about a strong, independent woman, you cannot then basically neuter her at the end of the book. That's my main, like, frustration. That was my first frustration with this book. And there absolutely could have been ways that you could have, that Robin Hobb could have twisted this, could have worked this, because I don't really actually care what ship Althea is captain of. I wanted her to be the captain. I didn't want to have this same dynamic where we have a man who is the captain and a woman who is the first mate. I didn't want that. I wanted that to be flipped. I wanted her to be the captain. I wanted Brashen to be her first mate, because in the way that this ends, basically what Robin Hobb is saying is Kyle Vester was right. Women shouldn't captain ships. That's what that feels like when you get to the end like that, is that all of these men, they're like, no, women can't captain ships. That's silly. We're right. That's how the ending of Althea's story feels. As far as the Vivacia, the ships go, there were definitely ways that could have been done so much better, so much more fleshed out, so much more, like, give us a fucking conversation between Althea and the Vivacia. Give us a moment where the Vivacia apologizes to her for fucking gaslighting her, okay? Give us that. And this gets into my other big, main, just problem, content warnings for discussion of sexual assault, because there is no way to divorce this from that. In the last little bit, for no reason that has anything to do with the fucking plot, Kenneth, everyone's, like, favorite just asshole that we want to set on fire, the person that everyone wants to see die choking on his own blood, keel-hauled under the ship, just the character that Robin Hobb has subjected us to for 3 fucking books, rapes her. And there was some interesting stuff that happened there on his end, and could have been interesting, and she just beefed all of that. We have this happen. We have this rape, and it has no greater bearing on any of the main plot. The one thing that it does is it finally gets Vivacia to wake up from being buried underneath this dragon, and the two selves to merge, etc., etc., and, like, why couldn't you have found a different way to do that? Why couldn't you have found another way to do that? Because what she does is she does that. She has that be the moment for bringing the Vivacia back, or bringing Vivacia back. That be the moment. And then she has Vivacia not believe Althea. There are 2 people that believe Althea. One of them is a woman, so it makes sense. The other one is Wintro, and he has to be told by someone else that his aunt is right. And I get that. I get that, because it's this woman he barely knows against someone who has been very, very good to him. I get why no one wanted to believe Althea. I believe that there was a point being made, and I do appreciate the fact that Malta never questions her. I appreciate the fact that Brashen, when she finally tells him, never questions her. I appreciate that. But just, like, the fact that was even included at all and had so little bearing on the plot, we have that happen. And not only is it poorly handled, but the end result is that Althea ends up on the ship that reminds her of her rapist. Like, that just, like, the level to which that just feels wrong and awful. And it doesn't, the fact that her trauma is magically taken away at the end does not make it better. Like, the reader still knows what the fuck happened. I thought about being like, you know what, I'm gonna take some of my personal bias out. I'm gonna give this 2 stars, because you know what, it doesn't deserve the 1 star. And then I got mad all over again that the ship she ends up on looks like her rapist to some extent, has her rapist's eyes and reminds her of him. And I just, like, so she is going to be, or would have been, had not some magical trauma removal thing happened, she is going to be forced to interact with something that has a part of the soul of her rapist, that has her rapist, and I'm sorry, that's just, all of that just bad storytelling, because she proved to me through both Malta and Wintro that she could get me there with other characters, and the fact that she did not, Like, it is so frustrating because the people that were, like, pushing back against me saying some of these things, were like, well, Robin Hobb doesn't wrap everything up in a nice little bow. And that's not my problem. I don't care that she didn't wrap anything up in a nice little bow. My problem is how Althea was treated in the last, like, 25% of this book, and how, like, if this was a male author that had done this, we would be dragging him over the fucking coals. We would be writing about a book that he's writing a book that excuses abusers because her abuser gets to be known as a hero throughout this whole, like, world or whatever it is, and she is left with none of the things that she originally started out with or started out working towards, and this cozy little ending where it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be happy being married and being first maid. Aww. Like, fuck that. You cannot sell your series as a book about a woman trying to correct an injustice that was done to her, then commit another even worse injustice and give her justice for none of that. Like, I haven't written Robin Hobb off completely, but a lot of it is going to have to do with how Assassin's Quest ends and how I feel about that. Because again, in Assassin's Quest, she has, like, a couple of really interesting female characters, and then she has a couple that it's like, I mean, why are they even here? Except to be the love interest or cause drama. I went into both of these series knowing that Robin Hobb is probably a different wave of feminism than the one that I have grown up believing and knowing. That she is a generation, at least couple generations, like she's my mom's generation removed from me, and I got that, and I can forgive that with a lot of what happened, and there were some things that were nice in this book, but at the end of the day, I cannot overlook the fact that the end game of her message with Althea, and even with Malta, is like, women have to be with a man, apparently, to have any power, and that victims should just be at peace with their rapists. And I know there are people that are going to disagree with me for that, but that, I don't know what other message you can get when you have the ending of a book where a character who has been assaulted is shown to be visibly unsettled by a figurehead because it resembles her rapist, and also her rapist is known as a hero of the pirates. Just fuck that. The next book that we're going to talk about is a little bit more fun, has a slightly more satisfying ending, though not all that much because it is part of a trilogy and it's the second book, so when is that ever satisfying? And not quite as well written when it comes to world building and character and all of that, but I still enjoyed so much more. Anyways, that is Tear Down the Throne by Jennifer Estep. This is the second book in the Gargoyle Queen series. I keep wanting to call it the Goblin Queen series, so forgive me if that's what comes up, but it is about gargoyles. There are no goblins involved as far as I know at this point. There is a full review. I'm not going to talk about this too long. This is following Princess Gemma after the events of Capture the Crown. She is going to a political summit, and at that summit, the mortal enemy of her family, the royal family that her family hates, decides to shake some things up, do some weird stuff, and make her have to go through a deadly, like, formal ancient combat scenario thing, although she's not the one having to do the combat, that's somebody else. Anyways, I enjoyed this. I liked watching the relationship between her and Leonidas kind of have to continue on. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you know she likes him, you know that, like, she is maybe protesting a little bit too much. I do wish we'd had a little bit better moment where she's like, okay, fine, I'm gonna stop fighting this. Like, this is not going to be one that you're going to for in-depth world building and all of that stuff, but I do think that if you like political fantasy romance with enemies to lovers and all of that thing where they're having to work together even though they don't really want to figure out what's going on, because if they don't work together, like, something terrible will happen, like, that is, I just find that a really fun premise, and I highly enjoyed it in this book, and I thought, for the most part, there were a couple of things that I wish, like, there was one specific switch in Gemma's attitude towards something or someone that I wish had been fleshed out a little better, because it does feel a bit sudden, in my opinion. But I'm not mad about it. Again, full review up here, or I'll have it at the end of the video as well. The next book that we need to talk about is A Million Quiet Revolutions by Robin Yao. This is a book about two trans teens that they get separated because one of them has to move out of town because of something that happens with their family, and it's about both of them kind of having to navigate coming out to their family, being their most authentic self, figuring out how do I transition from who people saw me as to who I know I am. One of them, Oliver, he finds the story about these two revolutionary soldiers, Aaron and Oliver. And there is this good evidence in this story that Oliver finds that these two soldiers were trans men who were in love, who were partners. And so it's about them kind of connecting with this story in the past, the two of them. I just, like, it's a book written in verse. It is so well done. It is such a sweet romance, a little angsty. There is a little bit of angst because there is nothing humans do better than miscommunicate. So it's about their relationship. It's about the two of them coming out and navigating through that process. And I thought it was so well done. I thought the way that we go back and forth between the two of them, it starts out kind of narratively, and then we move to letters as they're kind of corresponding back and forth after Aaron moves away to, I think it's New York, because of the family stuff, and then like it comes back to the narrative stuff at the end, and it just, like, the way that that transition was done is so good. Like, it's just very obvious how impactful a book like this could be for someone who is struggling, or for someone who's questioning, or for someone who's just looking for a story that is like theirs. Obviously, this is a fantastic and important book for the trans community, but I also think that if you are cis, it is worth picking this book up just to get a better understanding and idea of what people go through as they are making these decisions and discovering these things about themselves. I do not know if I said this was 5 stars at the beginning, or if I need to say that this was 5 stars now. One of them will stay in. I'm not entirely sure which one. Oh boy, my this one's going too. Anyways, from there we moved on to All the Feels by Olivia Dade. I know, I've been reading this for a very long time. If you've watched my, I don't know actually if I published any of those vlogs, but I've been reading this for a while. But I did need to read a book with stars on the cover, or finish a book with stars on the cover to get one of the prompts on Michelle's board for the Eternals boss battle. And so I picked this one because I was very close to the end, and it's really dumb that I waited this long to finish it. It is also very funny, like just knowing where I left off was very Demi of me. So this is about Alex and Lauren. Alex we know from the first book, spoiler alert. Lauren, we also know from the first book, spoiler alert. We're introduced to both of them at some point in that book. And basically the deal is that Alex is another one of the actors on this Gates of Gods, or Gods of Gates, or whatever the dumb Game of Thrones ripoff show that they're doing is. He's one of the actors. He has ADHD, so he's a bit impulsive, and he also has a very, like, high idea of, like, right and wrong, and not a lot of tolerance for people who are rude to other people. And so because of that, he's gotten into a few fights, there's been some stuff that's happened, and Lauren is hired to be his minder and make sure that he doesn't get into trouble and all of that stuff. And then Lauren is a therapist, that she was a therapist in an ER. She kind of ended up burned out or a little bit traumatized by it, because that is a very, like, you're seeing people at their worst. You're seeing people when a lot of, like, they are not, many of them are at the edges of their control. And so there's a higher chance that they are going to just snap on you. But it's about them and her having to, like, deal with his dumb ass as he is trying not to cause trouble and trying not to, like, let him get into trouble because she loses her job if that happens, and all of that stuff. She's basically doing this just because her cousins are the people, they're the, whatever their names are, equivalent from Game of Thrones. Ron and RJ, I think, are their names, possibly. Anyways, one of them is her cousin. He's an asshole. Everyone hates him, and I'm gonna be really interested when he gets to the point in the series, we get to the point in the series where he gets to lose his job at Star Wars because he's very open about the fact that he was winging it the entire time and has no idea what he's doing. Can't wait till we get to that part of the plot, for at least that part of his character arc. It's gonna be fun. This is cute, this is sweet, it's really fun. This is one, so if you are looking for more of a slow burn romance where you get a lot of the characters getting to know one another before the romance part starts. You may like this more than spoiler alert, because it's very slow burn. It's very much like, oh my god, when are they gonna kiss? How long am I going to have to deal with just this sexual tension in the atmosphere with nothing happening as these two idiots pretend? One of these two idiots pretends like they don't like each other, and the other one is trying not to be like an asshole about it. Although he is. He's a chaos. Alex is a chaos gremlin, and I love him, and also wanted to punch him in the face at times. If you do not like very, like, blunt, chaotic people who do not have a filter, you probably won't like Alex. There were times I was just like, you are being way too... Why are we having this conversation? It is making me uncomfortable. How is it not making Lauren uncomfortable? But he has zero filter and just says what he thinks. Anyways, I enjoy it. I liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I highly recommend that you pick it up if you liked spoiler alert, or even if you didn't like spoiler alert, because I think that it's kind of different. I will say this does happen. Some of this happens at the same time that spoiler alert is happening, so we get to see some of what we didn't see. We get to see some of what's going on with Marcus and April. We get to see some of that from Alex's and Lauren's, well, mostly Alex's perspective. The next one that I finished is the first of one of the books that I read for the Curious Minds book club for our June picks, May picks. I'm not entirely sure of our schedule at this point because we did have to do some finagling with timelines and stuff. But for our most recent round, that is Hood Feminism, Notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall. This book is just... I'll just show you, like, look at all that, okay? That's how good this book is. I could not stop highlighting this. This is Mickey Kendall talking a lot about intersectional feminism and how very often mainstream white feminism ignores the needs of women of color because they are too busy trying to hold on to the privilege that they think they have, or trying to have the same privilege as a white male. Like, that's what it is about. And she goes through and covers multiple different subjects and just talks about her thoughts and experiences and the stories that she's heard from those. It's really interesting because she doesn't really sit down and try and come up with answers. She just sits and she says, okay, these is the reality for women of color. Primarily she's talking about black women, but she is very good at making sure that she is including other women of color in these conversations that she's having. The different chapters cover things like food scarcity and how reproductive justice affects women of color. It talks about education and just various things that she has come up against in her life trying to make her way in this world and the things that she has learned. It's a really interesting mixture of both anecdotal evidence and statistical evidence. The overarching point in this is that we need to be looking at what women's needs are, and very often we ignore what women's needs are and we tell them what it is that they need and what will make them better, what will give them more power. And instead of being about gaining power, she wants feminism to be about meeting people where they are and making sure that they have what they need to thrive. She also does a really good job of like looking at the different generations and what feminism looks like to them, even though many of them, or even what like just survival looked like to them, and the feminist outcomes that that had on her own life. Needless to say, I gave this 5 stars. It was very good. It was everything I expected from following Mickey Kendall on Twitter, and it just really fleshed out some of the thoughts that and the things that I've seen her talk about and go over on Twitter. After that, I finished the fiction pick for the Curious Minds book club, and that is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. This is about Amira and Alex. You've heard me talk about it before because it's a reread, and I absolutely adored it the first time I read it. And the second time, Alex made me so angry. But it's about a white feminist and a black girl who is her nanny, and just the dumb stuff. It's not even, it is not a thriller. This is literary fiction. But at the same time, like, Alex, the white woman, is doing some serious stalker behavior, and it's just okay, So to give you an idea of who this character is, one of the first things that happens at the very beginning is she is at a conference, the thing that makes her go viral, as it were, and makes her this really important white feminist icon, or feminist icon, is what she sees herself as. She's at a conference talking about, and I don't even remember what the conference talk was about. It is not important, but she's there. She is pregnant with her second child, and her first child, who is 2, I will give you, who is 2, wakes up from a nap and asks the sitter, who is sitting there in the front row, for Cheerios, but Alex has not pumped that day, and she made a specific decision to do that, because what she has the sitter do is bring this 2-year-old up to the stage so she can breastfeed her while finishing her talk. And like, while if this was a small child, an infant, someone who was fully dependent on her mother for survival, while that might have been a flex in that case, I want to remind y'all that this child asked for Cheerios and her mother turned her into a political statement for her own clout. Just like, Alex deserves worse than what happens to her in this book, but she also deserves everything that happens to her in this book. And every single moment of insecurity that she deals with. And like, like 3 years later, still was like, yeah, just like found Amira's lostness, I guess, like lack of knowing what to do with her life. Like, I found that relatable. I feel like I'm still there just because I happen, I'm a millennial, and healthcare is still a huge concern for me. And I think it did a really good job of making me sit back and like this time and the first time I read it, just check in with myself and go, okay, am I being like this woman? Is there any similarity besides the fact that we're both white that makes me similar to Alex? And like, really is like one of those things that makes you sit down and really think about your actions. And I think that kind of is part of the purpose of the book. I can't speak for Amira and her friends. I can speak for like the representation of Alex, and I think that Kylie Reed honestly did a decent job of really capturing progressive white women. And the way that they just kind of, like, again, it was a perfect illustration of what Mickey Kendall is talking about in hood feminism, where Alex decides that she knows what Amira needs without ever asking Amira what she needs. And like I have seen the conversations that Alex has had happening on Twitter and things like that, and it's just like, yeah, it's definitely like, I believe that these things have happened, maybe not all in one woman, but or in one relationship, but I definitely, like, there are women out there like Alex, absolutely are. I did give it 4 stars this time instead of 5 stars because of the discussion that we had during the live show. It really made me rethink some things about like my initial impressions about this book and whether or not these characters are well written and fleshed out. I highly suggest that you check out that live show. It has Sarah, my other co-host for the Curious Minds Book Club, in it, obviously, and then we were also joined by Lauren over at the Novel Lush and Noria from Chronicles of Noria, and I think they had, despite just the universe trying to keep Noria from speaking, I think that both she and Lauren had some really insightful things that will make you think about representation and things like that. The final book that I read in the month of June was City of Dusk by Tara Sim. This I ended up giving 4 stars. I thought, so there are a few things here. I find this series very, very promising. I was drawn in, and should I tell you what the book is about? I probably should tell you about the book. So this is set in a world that there are like 4 different types of magic. Each type of magic has its own realm and also has like a house that is kind of the head of, or was the head, kind of the key liaison between that realm and the main world that they're in. And each house has an heir, yada yada yada. We're following the 4 heirs, or 4 people that are tied to the houses in this book, plus some other people, plus another person that you won't know how they are important until you get closer to the end of the book, but it's like I knew it was coming and I was like, oh, I'm here for this. While this had its flaws, I still ended up giving it 4 stars. I enjoyed it, I really liked it, and I'm looking forward to the next book. Not every character was my favorite. Some of them I'm just like, you're boring, and some of them I'm just like, you are have no loyalty. Whatever. I don't, like, you're mad at my favorite? Okay, you're no longer important to me. I'm very biased when it comes to books. I attach myself to a couple of characters and then I'm like, no one else matters. This is why things work really badly when you kill off my fave. I will tell you, like, the few things that, like, bugged me about this, and I think that these are issues that you would not have if you read it physically, but I did read it as the audiobook. The ending was very fast-paced, and it really accentuated an issue that is throughout the whole book. Because we have so many points of view, we do a lot of head hopping, and for the most part that is handled pretty well. There are a few places where, like, a shift happens and I had to go back because it was not obvious that a shift happened, and so I was very confused because I thought we were in Tasia's point of view, and suddenly, wait, when did Angelica get here? Oh no, we switched to Angelica's point of view. Okay, that makes sense. Continue on. That's a little bit of an issue, and it becomes especially an issue at the end where there is so much switching between people's points of view that I'm just like, I lost track a couple of times there. Again, that probably was partly because I was reading the audiobook and it would not be an issue if I'd read it physically. The other thing is that Tara Sim definitely has more points of view, not necessarily more points of view than she needs in this book, but she definitely wastes time, in my opinion, or wastes space in the book going back over events from another person's point of view. There are a couple of cases where I think she handled that well, where, like, because we have so many different points of view and there are so many things happening throughout this series or this book, like, there will be times where, like, something is happening with one character and something is happening with another character simultaneously, and so we'll go through events with the one character and then we'll go to this other character and go through events with them, but then end up also going through events that we've already gone through. And I think that could be worked on just a little bit, but it wasn't enough to really, like, ruin my enjoyment. It did get a little bit boring in the final bits of this. Like, there was a chunk where I was just like, this ending is taking so long. So there are definitely some pacing issues here. But outside of that, I really, really liked this world. I really liked the magic system. I think that Tasia and Julian are just fantastic characters. I'm highly interested in them. The others, I am intrigued in how they are going to continue on the story, what their impacts are going to be in the story. But one of them's a little full of themselves, and, like, I kind of relate to her on the level of being the eldest daughter and having a lot of pressure put on you and all of this stuff, and constantly being compared to other eldest daughters or daughters in families that are doing really well. I relate to that. I've been there. It wasn't enough to make her someone that I cared about, but also she is kind of unpleasant. So I think that's kind of the point. And then we have a couple of other people that were interesting and I liked them until something happened, and I was just like, y'all, come on. Like, you're really gonna do that? You're gonna be that way? For one little thing that happened. The little thing was murder, I will admit, but still. There is a lot just of intrigue and mystery, and there are a lot of questions for most of this and not a lot of answers that you get. And the main problem that everyone is trying to stop does not get resolved in this because something else comes up that they're like, oh no, we must stop this thing. And so they kind of have to not do what they were planning on doing at the beginning of the book. So anyways, I liked it. I recommend it. I probably read physically if you do physical books. If not, maybe bump the speed down a little bit more than you usually do. Okay, so my favorite and least favorite books for the month of June, that's the month we're in, I shall give them to you. I don't think anyone is going to be surprised. Like, it was the only 1 star. Don't fall. Don't do it. The only 1 star. I'm sorry. Least favorite book of the month. I was literally reading this and having flames come out my ears as I slowly realized what Robin Hobb was doing after all of that. Just slowly realized how this character's story was gonna end, and that she just decided that she just didn't care, is the impression I got. She just did not care about giving this character and ending that was anywhere near as satisfying as the other two characters that we have. My favorite book, I am going to say, was probably Hood Feminism. I don't, like, it's not like I don't want to say I enjoyed it, but it was something that really made me sit down and look inside and just check in with myself and check in with not just what I am doing, but how am I approaching these issues? How am I approaching other people? And I know this was not written for me, but like she did a really good job of making it very aware of what she was talking about. I found it very accessible, and yeah, I think we should be listening to more people like Mickey and less people like me. So y'all know the drill. It is the end of the, well, it's not the end of the month at this point, but like, you know what's going on here. Let me know what your favorite and or least favorite books were for the month of June. If you are not feeling chatty, but you still want to let me know that you watched to the end of the video, go ahead and leave me a skull emoji or a skeleton. Let's just say a skeleton emoji. You're not gonna know why, but just it's on the cover. Let's go ahead. There's a skull and vertebrae on the cover. So, anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I will have other videos over here. I will have that review I mentioned for the Goblin Queen Gargoyle. I told you I was going to do it. Gargoyle Queen series up here. And I will have a whatever is most recent on my channel down here. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!